Society caters to the lowest denominator.
For society advances due to the highest denominator.
When I was growing up, if somebody hit you, you hit them back.
People are like lightning. Path of least resistance. Only two things are infinite: the universe and human stupidity. Only I'm not so sure about the universe. And people are getting even more stupid, apparently. I'm Izzy.
And I'm Garcia.
Welcome to Informally Informed. Okay, so are we moving towards Idiocracy?
Yes. So,
let's start by explaining the movie.
So, Idiocracy is a 2006 film that basically it was a man who, what's his name? Owen Wilson's brother.
Luke.
Luke Wilson. He gets cryogenically frozen, accidentally, in 2006, and he wakes up in the future.
Where everybody's an idiot, and he's basically he's by default the most intelligent man on the planet, ends up becoming president. People do stupid things like trying to get plants to grow by using energy drinks to, as fuel, and he's like, well, have you thought about using water? And they're like, what, from the toilet? Because they don't understand that, it's something that you drink. I mean, obviously it's taken to the extreme for comedy value, but for the purposes of this conversation,
it's the decline. It's intellectualism, the rising consumerism, and the disregard for critical thinking. Essentially, that's what it is. It's a comedy. It's a comedy. So, is the world moving more and more towards idiocracy? Is he?
Well, the data shows that people are getting less and less intelligent through generations. Now, there's this thing called the Flynn effect, which showed over the course of the last century that every generation, people's IQ would go up by like 18 points up until about the 60s, due to a variety of things like people having to think more outside the box, an increase in technology, the Industrial Revolution, all of these things.
Rise in celebrity culture. People are more and more obsessed with this.
All these kind of things caused people to become more intelligent. And then around about the 60s, there's been studies of, famously, this Norwegian study where they had like 730,000 people, showed that in 1991 there was a 5-point decrease from 1975 and a 3-point decrease in 1975 from the 1960s. They did huge studies on it. Norway, Denmark, UK, France, Australia shows declining 2 to 4 points per generation effectively in terms of IQ. And the question is why. I've got a list.
I've also got a list.
Do you want me to go first?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, so the first one I've got: changes in the education system. Increasingly emphasises things like memorization of information rather than actually critically thinking, being taught what to think as opposed to how to think, which is obviously going to affect intelligence.
Can I just quickly, before you go on to the next point, because I also wrote that down as one of my points, and I wrote specifically about the UK, schools are not enforcing education, not in the same way that they used to. So even though I know some people are going to go, yeah, but you get fined, you get 2 fines for the same child in a 3-year period. So if you secondary schools are what, like, yeah, they're like 5 years, right? I have to think then, how long was I in secondary school for?
If you're not including college, yeah.
Yeah, if you're not including college, secondary school is only 5 years. If you are only being fined twice in a 3-year period, you potentially miss most of year 7, 8, and 9. You could potentially do that, and your parents would only be fined twice for the same child.
Yeah.
So there's no enforcing of education as there once was.
Yeah. The second one is technological addiction and short videos, which reduces the ability for things like long-term concentration, deep analysis.
Critical thinking.
People are less likely to be able to read complex books than they once were. If you ask people at Cambridge what their favourite book is, they're far more likely to say Percy Jackson than Gone with the Wind. Far more likely. Young adult books are now being voices some of the greatest works of literature by over 50% of people at university.
Yeah, also modern education, educational practices, they're less effective at developing certain cognitive abilities. So where you'd be able to, like you just said, where you'd be able to do word searches and such, people are unlikely to do that now. The decline of crosswords and such. Sudoku. People are less likely to do those. People are more likely to sit there on their phones.
Yeah.
A keyboard warrior than they are to go and read a book.
And a lot of these books, books are one of the best ways to increase vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
People aren't doing it. And decreasing vocabulary, well, first of all, it leads to a lowering of the verbal IQ, obviously. But it has long-term effects because there's less information going in.
Yeah, and just to bring it back to the film, Luke Wilson had to speak to them. Do you remember there was a point he used a big word and they were like, what does that mean? And it wasn't even that big a word. They're more likely to dumb down their speech now so that more people will understand, when that shouldn't be the case, and it didn't used to be the case. It used to be the case where people would use bigger words because they knew what they meant.
Yeah. And even if they didn't, somebody would be like, what does that mean? And then you'd explain it to you, because that's how you learn other words.
But these days, it's if you don't know anything, you go and ask Google.
Yeah. The next one on the list for declining cognitive ability is environmental factors.
Mm-hmm.
Things like processed foods that are low in nutrients, microplastics.
Microplastics are in everything now.
Increase in sugar, pesticides, air pollution, all things like that affect brain development, specifically in the early years. Did you know that they spray plastic on tea bags to stop them from breaking as easily when you put them in your tea?
I did not know that. But what I do know is that they used to give free milk in schools to children in Britain. When I went to school, you still got free milk. I don't know when that ended.
I didn't get free milk when I was
I got free milk when I was in primary school. And you used to be able to... I mean, I know that they do breakfast clubs now. But even just a start to the day, having breakfast, kids are less likely to do that. So lacking in concentration to do the basic things. And that is, to me, I know it's not quite an environment, but it is an environmental factor because it's what's happening in the school environment. If you're unruly in school, you're going to mess it up for everyone else. The people that actually want to learn can't learn. So it's not environmental in the sense that it's in outside, but it's environmental in the sense that it's not the environment that provides an excellent ability to learn.
Yeah. And the last one I've got is culture. Culture is attaching less importance to intellectual debate and conversation and more importance to ridiculous things like cat videos and celebrity gossip and all that kind of thing. People are less likely to be interested in topics such as history and politics and, maths, scientific developments. People are far less likely to be interested in that sort of thing compared to, previous generations. Instant gratification over long-term development.
That's what I was going to say, instant gratification. I mean, I also have a list. My list is exhaustive.
Just on that point before you go over your list.
Yeah.
I saw a quote the other day. Can't remember who said it. Somebody said it to me, like one of them meme things. And it's not going to be word for word accurate, but it's something like tolerance will become so prevalent in society that the intellectuals will fear being intellectual. The intellectuals won't have conversations for fear of offending the imbecile. And I'm like, yeah, fair.
Because society caters to the lowest denominator, even though it shouldn't.
But society advances due to the highest denominator.
Indeed it does. Indeed it does. I mean, I'll go over my list. Obviously, some of them do cross over the edge of technology, smartphones impacting cognitive capacity. The rise in smartphones has meant that people are... the information is at your fingertips, and yet people are using it to look at cat videos. Instead of speaking to someone about your thoughts, you'll go and write about it on the internet. So you're not getting that back and forth, that correction, that thing that we have, wherein you're wrong. No, you're not. You know what I mean? You're not having that back and forth. Your ability to change your mind is stunted by the echo chamber that is the internet.
The algorithms.
Yep.
Again, what to think, not how to think.
Yep, social media, the rise in social media. I touched on this just now with the keyboard warriors. Social media is destroying the brains of the youth. Do you know that Facebook has an age restriction?
Yes, it's 13.
Yep. Yet I know 9-year-olds with Facebooks, Twitter, Instagrams, all of those things. 13. And I'm like, why is it that you as a parent are not having oversight on this? Which brings me to my next point, which is working parents might not have enough oversight over their kids. With the rise of people having to work because the economy is shit, please see our earlier episode of what's happening in the UK, or maybe later episode, I'm not sure yet, and what's happening in the UK. Parents are having to work to make ends meet, and as such, they're not there to make sure their kids are doing their homework. They're not there to say to their kid, well, it's time to go and read now. Did you have reading time growing up?
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that didn't. I read anyway, because I used to like the library. I used to have a crush on the librarian, I'm not going to lie. But I also liked the library. Just because it was quiet and it offered me that peace to be able to read.
I remember, my parents used to take I had a Nokia 3310, but I only got it when I was like 15.
I had a Motorola C180 and I got that when I was 12.
And I remember my parents would take my phone off me at like 8 p.m. and the books would come out, you're going to be reading. And I remember this one time, I thought, you know what are they going to do? So I hid the phone behind the back of, because I wanted to play Snake, because, you know, back in the days where Snake was like the only game you could play. I hid it behind the back of my bedside cabinet, my bedside table, right behind. And my parents came and said, where's your phone? It's the phone off. And I was like, oh, I can't find it. I said, well, look for it. And I spent ages, obviously I knew where it was, spent ages looking. And I was like, you've hidden it. I was like, I've not. I've genuinely, I've lost it. Then Mum was like, oh, let's phone it. And I thought, oh shit, I've had it now, haven't I? Anyway, phoned it, went straight to voicemail. I think maybe because of the location, it blocked the signal. Anyway, I had a full night on the phone. They never caught it. But like, my mother would give me books after. So if you wanna lights off at whatever time, but phone off at 8:00. No technology after this time. If you want to do something, read.
I also had to go to bed at 8, but also I lost my phone in the first year that I got it. And you know where it turned up? Like 3 years later, behind the fireplace. I know. I didn't catch fire or anything. It was just there. Found the phone eventually, but by this point, because it wasn't like now wherein you were sat on your phone all the time. It really was just a communication tool. And when I lost it, it didn't make any odds and ends to me. I wasn't like, oh my God, I've lost my phone. Like people now, they leave their phones at home. They lose everything. Yeah. And so the rise of social media, the rise of technology is killing intellectualism. And the ability to think outside the box is killing intellectualism. The echo chamber that is technology is. Well, it's not the technology, it's how it's used. But like I said, you know, and also, I mean, this is going to be a controversial issue, but bear with me anyway. Women in the workplace. Women in the workplace is led to, I'm saying that it's led to a decline in cognitive ability for children for the simple fact, it brings me back to my previous point about oversight. There is no one there when you get home. There's no one there to enforce your homeworking. There's no one there to help you with your homework. So we saw this during the pandemic, wherein parents could not cope with their own kids for that many hours because they'd never had to spend that much time with them. And that's leading to a decline. School is free here, and I fear that that's also leading to it. Now, I have nothing to back this up at all.
That's okay.
But I'm looking at it in terms of, in Jamaica, which is where I'm from, school's not free. So parents will go without meals to make sure that they can afford education for their kids. So people take school very seriously. Whilst here, it's just kind of, I'm not going to school because it's free. There's no impact on the family. So school's free, pens and paper is free, even though there's never enough.
It's all computers now anyway.
And school classroom sizes are going up, which means that you're not getting the same level of input that you would from a teacher. Corporal punishment is no longer in schools. Now, when I was in school, it wasn't in schools. But I also felt like my teacher had a bit, all my teachers had a bit more control. It wasn't the case where you see it now with these teachers that are being abused and so quitting. There's a decline in teachers and people wanting to go into the education system because they're not being paid enough to deal with the things that they're dealing with in schools. I mean, I remember I think it was last year, there was in a local school to us, there was a young person that had assaulted a teacher, but really assaulted the teacher. Teachers got permanent disabilities because of this. Shit. And for me, that kid should be in jail because they've committed a crime, and the age of criminal responsibility in this country is 10 anyway, but the child did not go to prison. There's also a rise in children in mental health settings, and that's leading to a decline in society and in education. People haven't got the resilience to deal with, we're not going back into this argument, people don't have the resilience to deal with basic things that are happening in schools. The rise in when I was growing up, if somebody hit you, you hit them back. Now, if somebody hit you, you go and tell the teacher, who has to deal with this, who has to deal with screaming parents, who has to deal with, my child wouldn't, but your child did. But you wouldn't know that because you don't actually know your children, because you see them for maybe 2 hours in the evening. And when you do see them, they're on their phones. They're not having any kind of input. Also, the family is declining. And that's leading to a drop in intellectualism. Because you used to be able to, you'd speak to generations. To generations. They'd have control over things. So even if your parents had to go and work, you'd go to grandparents' homes who would help you with your homework and such like that. We are seeing a very big decline in the village. A lot of people are just cutting their parents off. And that's having a knock-on effect on their own children.
Yeah.
The welfare state. I'm saying that in terms of Britain, it's leading to a drop in intellectualism. It's leading to us going towards never having to figure out how we get around things, but instead reliance on the government. We said this before, this country and the welfare state. I mean, I want to scrap the welfare state anyway, and replace it with something else. The breakdown of the home. I know I've said a lot about the home, but the breakdown of the home. So, daddy leaves or mommy leaves. You're left with a parent who has to fend for you. They don't have any kind of village, and as such, you're just left to it. You're left to have to raise your younger siblings. So who's looking after your education? And again, I mentioned the Flynn effect and the reverse Flynn effect and environmental factors. Genetic changes. Such as decline in IQ, decline in cognitive ability, decline in your ability to critical think. These are linked to genetics.
Are they?
They are. There's actually a study about this. In the same study,
I found. I believe that genetics is linked. That IQ is linked to genetics.
I don't think.
But you disagree with that?
I think that it's a slippery slope. That one. That goes into eugenics.
Agree or do you disagree? Because you just said you agreed.
I agree in terms of
Sorry, go on.
I believe in terms of changes to the gene pool that could be contributing to the decline, particularly if there's a correlation between intelligence and reproductive success. So in terms of you are having loads and loads of kids, you're
But here's the thing, that everything's genetic because you get your genes from your parents. So you can split twins at birth, Put one in a thick household, one in an intelligent household. By the adults, time the adults, they've only got a 15-point IQ difference, maximum 15
But that
points.
15 points could be quite big in a sense that if IQs are already dropping.
Sure, but they're never going to be like most. There is definitely a genetic element.
But when I'm
IQ.
talking about genetics in terms of IQ, I'm also looking at like, because I mentioned this in another episode, wherein Pakistanis who are having intellectually disabled children.
Sure, but IQ is inherited, a lot of it. Now, if you take two genius parents that have IQs of like 160 and get them to reproduce, you're not going to have, statistically speaking, a genius child. But what you are going to have is a child that is significantly over 100, but they're probably, if they're lucky, going to get to like 130, something like that. Maybe just possibly get into Mensa. But they're never going to have an IQ of like 80 or 90. There is a genetic element to IQ. There just is. Like, there's research been done multiple times on this. I'm not saying it's a be all and end all, it's not. But that is the case, and if that risks talking about eugenics, well, I guess that's what the risk is, because there is a genetic link.
I think that most of the research that I did pointed mostly to environmental factors, because
which
again,
is also a big factor.
Because if you had like two genius parents, and let's say you produced a child and their IQ was like over 100, right? In order to get them to that 60 or 160, their parents would be able to they'd have that oversight over them. They'd be making sure that they did their homework. They'd be reading to them when they couldn't read themselves. They'd be encouraging them to read, because that would be in line with their own intellectualism.
Of course, and you can increase somebody's IQ, like I said, 15 points or whatever. But 15 points from 130 IQ only takes you down to 115. You know, there's still a biological factor there. Anyway, are those all your points for the reasons why?
Yeah, those are all my points.
Cool.
I mean,
cool. Yeah, no, you had more than me. Some of those I never even thought about. So, the thing I wanted to talk about as well was briefly what areas we're seeing a decline in. I wrote a list.
Go on.
These are the things what people are getting worse at, and one of the things I put down, I know this is subjective, but the ability to make decisions, to make good decisions. But obviously that is subjective, although apparently there have been studies. I didn't really look into it much. People are getting worse at DIY.
Oh, I saw this in my research and I was like, DIY? But then if you haven't got the cognitive ability to be able to think outside the box.
Exactly. People's vocabulary is shrinking. People's sense of direction is getting worse. People that habitually use GPS there's a decline in the hippocampal dependent spatial area of the brain, which suggests the ability to come out of a poor path, cut and go a park that way without knowing why. You just know that people can't do that.
People can't read maps.
People can't read maps. People's concentration is getting worse. People aren't reading as much. I already mentioned that. People have lower coping skills. People have weaker interpersonal skills, so in-person conversations.
Because they're too busy on the internet. Get off the internet!
People have increased levels of anxiety and depression, decreased levels of eye contact and active listening, decreased financial literacy, which is something we talked about in a previous episode, decreased emotional intelligence. Fewer people are learning to play instruments than what they used to. There's increased level of impatience and therefore decreased level of forward thinking, decrease in math skills, decrease in ability to retain information, so memory. And I just added this one off the bat, no evidence, but I just kind of know, and I think most people kind of know as well, decrease in survival skills.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%.
However, young people are obviously more proficient in technology, if one can call that an area
I guess
of
we have to go through some positives.
And they're more likely to speak a second language, and the ability to speak a second language has been linked to cognitive ability. Those are the only two I've got for that.
That's the only two that I got for the positives. I don't see society... I see society getting dumber around me every day. I also feel that obviously you spend most of your time at work, and where I work in a busy A&E department. I look at it and I think I often see people at their worst, so they probably don't have the cognitive ability to explain anyway. And people do also have the right to make poor decisions. So even if they're the smartest people in the world, they may know what the right decision is, but have chosen to make poor decisions.
Sure, people have the right to make poor decisions, but that doesn't mean that then, people are getting worse at making good decisions. But again, I did mention it's
But then
subjective.
with the rise of, it is subjective, but then I look at it, the rise of people that have, the amount of people that have to deal with this kind of situation.
And the other thing I did was had a look at what this will lead to. Did you do that?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So what will this lead to? The movie Idiocracy. Ineffective decisions at the policy levels. So in other words, you get shit politicians, and I could argue that that's something that we're seeing. You cannot expect me to believe that the vast majority of the Labour Party are of high intellectual capability. They're obviously not. A decrease in scientific achievements.
Yep, I mean, they're pushing STEM subjects all the time, but there's less and less uptake for it.
Yeah. But one could argue that there were not that many high-end scientific jobs available. So you'd have to go down, the average IQ would have to go down by a lot in order to not be able to fill those posts, because there's always outliers.
Of course, and also in the age of globalism, you can just hire someone from another country who's not experiencing intellectual disabilities to go there. Intellectual disabilities.
So we're going to face serious challenges in things like science, economics, politics, the ability to communicate with each other. And it will effectively lead to a society where nobody really finds deep fulfillment, deep purpose within life. And we'll end up in a point where it's just fine. How was work? It's fine. Same as yesterday. How's family? How's you? It's fine. There's no. If people aren't filling their potential, decrease in happiness.
Yeah,
But having said that, I mean, just because people were a bit stupider 200 years ago doesn't mean they were less happy. So I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a slippery slope that we're not going to go down. But also the less the decrease in third spaces is also adding to that. Yeah, which is work, home, and the third place that you'd actually engage with people to build those interpersonal skills. They're being closed left, right, and centre. I mean, most of the pubs around me are closed. Yeah, work from home, which means that you're not going to be able to practice these skills anyway.
Yeah.
So society as a whole is.
Yeah.
It's going to shit.
Okay.
Solutions? I don't know what there is to how to solve this, because our society is not set up in a way that you can actually solve this. It's not.
It depends on what kind of. There's not solve it. But just, a little bit of a salvation.
No, but even in terms of, I mean, there is already we discussed that there's an age limit with social media. People don't enforce it.
Sure.
There's already sorry, go on.
But I was just going to respond to what you just said, which is people are like lightning. Path of least resistance. If you give them the hard path and you give them the easy path, 9 times out of 10 they're going to pick the easy path. That's just human nature, and there's not much you can do about that. I would argue that one of the things you could do is change the educational system, make critical thinking mandatory.
Oh, I agree.
There are some schools that do it, like Eton, for example, is a school that does it because they know that the boys in that school are going to grow up to face they're training the next brand of CEOs, the next generation of prime ministers. They know they're going to be under fire, so they are taught how to debate from an early age because they know they're the elite school and all that jazz. And again, the rest of it is on an individual level. When you talk about what can we solve, I mean, it's one thing talking about societal, governmental, what policies could you enforce. But for parents, limit time on social media. Yeah. Read books. Spend more time solving logical puzzles.
Get family-friendly hours at work so you're actually around for
Something
your
else the
children.
government that could do. I mean, I don't know how you feel about regulation, but more regulation when it comes to what goes into our food. Getting people to understand healthy lifestyles. That's something you can do.
Yeah.
You want to put a tax on McDonald's.
There
so they've got
already
to
is.
up their price.
There's already a sugar tax in the UK. All of these things are they're already in play, but also at the same time, we also need to stop over. I mean, this wasn't one of my points, but I've just thought of this. We need to stop over pathologizing stupidity.
Yes. So, in order to be considered cognitively impaired, you need an IQ of 70 or less. It considers you...
Cognitively impaired, yeah.
You have a disability. You have a learning disability if your IQ is less than 70. The average is 100. And the average will always be 100 because that's how IQ tests are worked out. They take the test of every single person that does an IQ test that year, work out the average, and if the mean person or the average person gets 100, then they'll work out your IQ test based on that.
But I guess in terms of looking at... Sorry, I interrupted.
No. I was just going to say, so when we say people are reducing in their IQ points, they technically can't because the average is always going to be 100. But yeah. You know when we say that.
But when we talk about, when I'm talking about, people making excuses over pathologizing, they want a lot of parents that I come into contact with anyway, and I'm sure there's studies on this. There's a rise in the amount of people that are diagnosed with a learning disability or a learning difficulty. That's not to say that they don't have it, but I'm saying it's not an excuse for you not to do something about it. So they go, oh, my child they don't understand because this and that, when in actuality, you've not tried to teach them in a way that they do understand, because we have to speak to people in ways that they understand. If you're telling me that you don't understand the words that I'm saying, I've got a literally picture chart that will explain that to you. It's not an excuse. In a world of technology, it's not an excuse. I mean, look at Stephen Hawking. He lost his ability to speak. He figured it out. So, well, he probably didn't figure it out. Well, he probably did figure it out. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think it's less of the excuses and more of the doing. Yeah. We're a society are too busy excusing everything.
If anybody else has any other solutions, please let us know, because we've come up with a few suggestions, but for the most part we're drawing a blank.
Yeah, and also, you know what? Watch the film and then let me know what you think.
Yeah, it's a good film. It's a funny movie.
It is a funny movie, and it's got the
cautionary
guy from
tale,
White
if you
Chicks
will.
in it. What's his name? The black guy from White Chicks.
Terry Crews.
Terry Crews is in it, and he's the president. So yeah,
good
give it a go.
And yeah, join us next time.
Yep, it's goodbye from me.
Bye.
Let us know if you agree or disagree with any of our views. That's the point of the conversation. Join in.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.